Welcome to CMA 101. My name is Chris Baptista. I'm the director of Homes by CMA, and today is all about variations. A variation is pretty much a change once you have signed your contract. So once you have signed your contract, any changes you want to make is called a variation. The variation will fall into two categories. The first one is a structural, which you really want to avoid. And the second one is a non-structural. For example, if you want to delete a ceiling fan from your alfresco. So how does it work? Once you know what changes you want to make, you will be in contact with your client liaison officer, depending on the builder that you are dealing with, which will then check with your site supervisor if the variation is even possible. Once we get confirmation, the variation is then priced up by the estimator, and then the pricing is passed on to your CLO, who will put all that information into a variation document. Keeping in mind that an extension of time may be required, so an EOT, if your build is going to take longer because of that variation. For example, if you add a swimming pool to your build. The other problem we may be faced with is an updated building approval. For example, if you delete the ceiling fan to your alfresco, that will affect the energy efficiency of your house and therefore require an updated building approval. From that point, the CLO fine-tunes the variations with the client, so that's usually a few back and forth to just make sure we get everything right on that variation. Once this is all sorted, the client signs the variation because everything needs to be signed, so make sure everything you agree with your builder needs to be signed. Once we get a signed variation, it goes back to the estimator, who will then reissue new purchase orders, and it may have to go back to drafting if the plans need to be changed. So once we get the plans and the purchase orders back, they need to be resent to the relevant contractors, for example, in the case of the ceiling fan, the electrician, and from that point, the site supervisor will then need to make sure that the work gets done. And the final step is the invoicing of that variation once we reach that step. So as you can see from that board, a variation goes through a lot of people. Therefore, there's a really high chance of error. The second point, as you can see from that board again, is a variation is very time consuming. The more items are on that variation, the more time it will take for the office to do up the variation, to price it up, to build it, and to invoice it. And that's why most builders charge a variation fee. They range from $1,000 to $3,000 plus, and a lot of it has to do with obviously the time that it takes and the effort that it takes to do a variation, but also the risk factor that is involved with the variation. So for example, you may simply want to change your internal paint, but if the builder makes a mistake somehow along the lines and paint your house a different color, they might have to repaint your whole house, which is why that risk factor is very important, and which is why there's always a variation fee. So to conclude, the best thing you can do is always get everything done before your contract is signed, so that there is no variation, because if there is one, it will incur a variation fee and there's a high chance of mistakes. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel for more of this content.